Hey. So this spooky box is like 3 weeks old. No, it's longer than that. It's I was supposed to open it like last month. However, for 2 weeks, I was a juror on a criminal case here in my county, and that ended finally this last Friday. I'm still recovering mentally from that, and I'm just gonna say trigger warning. If you don't like crime stuff or things that have to do with child abuse, just watch with caution or listen with caution, or just like don't watch this video at all. Just fair warning. But before I get into opening this box, which is probably some good therapy in itself, just some nice spooky treats, you know. This case, this was the hardest thing one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. I've only been summoned for jury duty one other time in my life. And that was like well over 15 years ago. I was like probably like 19, 20, something like early. I'm 35 now. It's been a while since I've been in my 20s. And I never actually served on a juror. My number never got called. So this time, I've never been summoned in the state of Oregon. And so I got my very first summons, and I'm like, okay, interesting, fine. I go, and it took them 2 days to actually select a jury. They had to select 14. Initially you need 12, but they always pick 14 in case something happens to 2 people. You need extras. So it took them 2 days. So I had to go 2 days in a row to see if I was going to be selected. And God, there was probably like, out of everyone who was summoned, probably like, it had to have been close to like I want to say 80 people, but I could be wrong. At least in my group, it was like 40 people per group. So really, I guess that is like 80 people total. They brought in like 2 different groups. Or did they bring in 3? You know what? I don't remember. I don't know. It was a lot of people. And somehow I got selected. It's completely random, I guess, how they do it. But the process was extremely interesting and also kind of slightly fascinating. I mean, I've watched crime documentaries, I've watched crime shows, murder podcasts, murder movies, shows, like all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys also watch that stuff. I mean, hey, ghosts, paranormal, creepy things. I mean, that's kind of like how probably most of you found me, is just me talking about spooky things, scary stories and all that. But the process of, like, you know, they have like the prosecutor and the defendant, and I didn't know. I mean, I've watched documentaries, but I've never like paid too much attention to like legal stuff and like verbiage and how things really work. I just kind of more so pay attention to the story itself. And so you have the prosecutor and the defense, and they would ask all of us jurors before they made their final selection, like questions, because we found out that this case was a criminal case, and it's going to be long, and it has to do with child abuse. And they actually let all of us know what the defendant was being charged with, and it was 7 counts of child abuse. We didn't know any other details to that. And so they asked us if any of us were friends with law enforcement. And then they asked if any of us had any history of child abuse or know anyone. And same goes for any drug addicts, like heroin, meth, drug abuse, even alcohol abuse. They were like, we want to know if anyone has any history, because really the whole point of being a juror is to come in and have an open mind. Oh, just an open mind, because the judge made it clear. He was like, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And so initially I was like, okay, I don't want to just assume that this person did these things, because my job as a juror is to be open to the possibility that they didn't. So, which is that's very difficult, because I don't want to assume either way. But a lot of jurors that got summoned got let go because they had either been abused or know someone who'd been abused as a child. Some were friends with law enforcement, and I guess some were just dismissed because of that, or they were married to one, or dated one, or their best friend was one. And yeah, and then some people had work conflict. They're like, I'm the sole I'm the sole provider of my household and I can't miss work, because when you do jury duty, like, I mean, you get paid for it, but it's not as much as your day job. And so I heard every excuse in the book, like every possible excuse, because a lot of people think that, you know, jury duty is an inconvenience, and sure, it can kind of feel like that when you're in your routine. Really, I had no excuse not to be there. I go with the flow every day. I don't have like a set schedule to work. I just make it up. And so I really didn't have a reason not to be there. And I had no history of anyone in my personal life abuse substances or people, like anything. So somehow I got picked to be one of 14. And the thing is, what they picked us on the second day of us all being there. And then they're like, okay, here's a lunch break, and the 14 of you are going to return after lunch at this time, and we're going to get started. And we come in and we sit down in our little jury seats in a traditional courtroom. And it really was like full blown, okay, we're not wasting time. We're going to go full on into this case. And I'm personally not going to go into too many details, just in case, as far as the injuries, like what I saw. I will tell you what the injuries were. However, I don't know if I want to describe. There's one injury I don't know if I want to describe. We'll see. But the prosecutor is like, introduction to this case, and it was like that whole cliche line of, what I'm about to show you is disturbing, and we just saw pictures of the abuse. And I will, disclaimer, it was not sexual abuse, and the individual did not die, so it's not like a murder, and it's not a sexual abuse case. It's just a physical abuse. And not knowing, we were only told that this was abuse done to a minor under the age of 10. I'm thinking, oh, it's a kid. Okay, well, the pictures we saw, it was of a 6-month-old baby. And this is why I say trigger warning, and I'll just do another trigger warning. If you can't do child abuse, especially to a baby, just listen with caution, or just click out of this video. The abuse was awful. The images are things that I can't unsee. Like, it's in there. And that was really hard. That was a really hard thing to see. It was awful. And then I don't want to like go day by day by day, but the case, it was long in a sense that it was a week and a half, but it was also short in a sense that they didn't waste any time. It was, you know, and the thing is, like, we were in and out of the courtroom so much because things would be brought up by the defendant or the prosecutor or a witness, and then we would have to be excused because it was information that we weren't allowed to be made aware of. And so a lot of, like, when you watch a show or a movie that has to do with anyone in a courtroom, it's never that short, it's never that quick. It's a lot of waiting. So like a day in the life of a juror on a criminal case or just on trial, you know, show up at 8:30. You got to get through security. Now let's talk about security for a minute. You know, you have to take off all your like electronic devices, like your smartwatches, your phones, jewelry. I didn't wear any jewelry, but you have to also dress appropriately, like you would for court. Just not like fancy or nice, just comfortable, but not like, you can't wear sweatpants or a hoodie or whatever. They just don't want you to dress grungy. You go through security. When you have, like, I brought my water bottle, you have to take a sip of, they have to watch you take a sip of your water as you go through. And so depending on the line, if there is any, I always showed up really early so I could just get through. You get through security and the judge is like, I want to start at 9. So please be here between 8:30 and 8:45 because I want to start at 9. Rarely did we ever start on time. So I would get there at 8:30 and I don't mind waiting, but sometimes by the time everyone showed up, the clerk would come in and go, okay, how many do we have? Everyone here? Cool. And sometimes they would go, okay, about 15 minutes. And we're like, okay. Well, we learned very quickly that 15 minutes can easily turn to 30, can easily turn to 45, can easily turn to an hour and a half. And it was a lot of waiting, and sometimes we wouldn't even get started. Sometimes we would get started at like 9:30, right? But then all of a sudden, okay, you guys have to go back into the room and wait. And sometimes we would wait for an hour. And then we were allowed to come back in. And then, lunch break. And then, okay, we're going to start at 1:15 or 1:20. We might not start till 2. But then there'd be other days where we would wait all morning. We get in at 11, like into the room or into the courtroom. And then, okay, break for lunch at noon, and then come back at 1:15, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're really starting at 1:30, and we would start, and then no break. Like, we'd have like a little break, but like go until 5. So it was like a 9 to 5 thing. But every day was different, and so we spent a lot of time in the jury room. And we were not allowed to talk about the case at all. Not with our friends, family, literally to no one, not even to each other as jurors. We were just pretty much, you keep it in here. You don't talk about it, you don't mention it. But we were allowed to like get to know each other and chit chat and like, I don't know, talk about everything else. About our lives, who we are, what we like, and you know, we got to know each other pretty well. I still don't know everyone's name. We didn't really, I don't know, some of us knew some of our names, but we didn't really do like a whole like introduction thing. We were just stuck in a room together. And even some, I heard their name once, but I forgot. So that was also equally as hard, to not talk to anyone about it, to keep it all in, because I am a verbal processor. Like at the end of the day, you know, my husband's like, how's your day? And then I go, how's your day? You know, and we talk about our days. I was able to talk about everything else except for the trial. So I could only tell like 40% of my day. I couldn't tell anymore, and it was really, really hard. But in a way, it was okay, because I would rather save the whole story to tell somebody at the end, rather than little by little and keep the anticipation like at an all-time high. But that's how I felt every day. It was like every day we learned a piece of the case, and sometimes something would get mentioned and I would be like, how is that relevant to anything? And we were allowed notepads so we had notepads, but we had to keep them in the juror room when we went home at the end of the day. But we could keep notes during the trial. And I would like write down like, what does this mean? And what does that mean? And then we wouldn't learn like the relevance to the case until like maybe a day or even 2 days later. And then I'd go, oh, that's why that was mentioned. And so it was like watching an episode to a show and having to wait a week to see the next episode, that you're left on a cliffhanger literally every single day. And it's about stuff where you're like, wait, why is that relevant? And also, nothing is told in a timeline, like from start to finish. Everything is like all over the place. Like you're kind of told at first the initial incident, and then it jumps fast, it jumps forward in the timeline, and then you jump backward and then forward and then maybe further back and then forward again. So yeah, and it was a lot of just trying to piece the timeline together. That was really, really difficult. And you know, now that I think about it, maybe I should save like the whole timeline, like the actual story of this case, for maybe a separate video, because it's a lot, and I don't want this to be like an hour long, because I need to open a spooky box. So speaking of spooky box, maybe I'll at least open it, and at least open something that's nice while I tell the sad story. Okay, this is loud. What is this? Is it a bag? Oh, it's a bag, and it's like all velvety and soft. Oh. That's really cute. I like that. You know, I could have used a bag like this when I was a juror. I just needed like a small bag to keep my stuff in. This would have been perfect. I mean, I have a million other spooky box. Rest your bones. I am so resting my bones lately. Oh, I like this so much. But yeah, I think I'll save maybe the actual story to the case for a different video. So if you guys like that, please just thumbs this up or just comment down below. Because I guess maybe this is just more of an introduction to like it in general. But I'm like already spacing out. So God, yeah, this, okay. The timeline was extremely difficult to follow, and in the middle of all the witness testimonies, the victims, well, not the victims, but like the witnesses, that's the word I'm looking for, the witnesses, and everyone involved, the paramedics, the officers, the doctors, everyone involved was there almost, and it was really hard. I mean, and as a juror, you have to see all the evidence, like all the photographs, the 911 call, just all the phone calls, everything, like pictures, text messages, the photographs and the 911 call were the hardest. They were the hardest things to experience. And some of the witness testimonies, one of them was really, really difficult. And so that was really hard to experience. Oh, but okay, I'm gonna open one more thing. Sorry if this is all these little candies. Cute. Oh, what do they say? Quality confectionery. Like a little baggie. I still feel really exhausted from all this. You know, let me just give you a brief summary, and I guess let me just give you a brief summary of the case, and if you want more, I'll just make another video with more detail. So I had actually made a post on my Instagram the other day, kind of giving basically what I'm about to tell you about this case. And it was a criminal case, child abuse. The defendant, the one being charged, was a guy named Brandon Nagy, and it was the state of Oregon versus him, which I'm already kind of like, it's pretty bad when it's the state versus somebody, because that's not usually a good sign. And he was being accused of 7 counts of child abuse. And he is the same age as me, which is very crazy. He is not the father of this baby, but he was dating the mother. In this case, also, I forgot to mention, this happened in 2017, so 5 years ago. And the mother of this baby, at the time in 2017, she was 20. She was 20, because she's 25 now. So her and Brandon, her name's Kara, and her and Brandon started dating. I'm gonna guess like the end of 2016, maybe. They were both previous meth and heroin addicts. She had been clean her entire pregnancy. The baby, his name was Callan. He was born in, I believe, July of 2016, and she was clean through her entire pregnancy, and she was even clean after he was born. She was pretty much clean all the way up until she met Brandon. He kind of enabled both of them to relapse. But she actually met Brandon through her dad, because her dad and Brandon worked together in like construction. And she had an apartment. She did not have a job. She was basically a stay-at-home mom. Brandon was the one who had a job, and he probably helped supply the drugs, probably. Also, side note, Brandon was in the courtroom, like he was there. And so anyway, okay, so the timeline of events. You have January 2017, January 27th, Kara had left Callan in the care of her grandma because she had to go run errands, which Kara later testified that she was probably out doing drugs or getting high, probably with Brandon and friends, who knows. Callan had fallen, but grandma had caught him, like as he was on a table, in his chair, and I guess he like wiggled out like babies wiggle, and he wiggled and she caught him, but as she caught him, he bumped his lip on like a chair or something and just got a little cut. And the grandma, or I think Kara's dad, was also there, and he called Kara and was like, hey, just so you know, this happened, but don't worry about it, like he's fine. Kara raced back to make sure he was fine. He was fine, happy little baby, just a little cut on his lip. And then a couple days later, Kara and Brandon go to her grandmother's house for dinner, which was on a Sunday, and her grandmother notices some bruising that's forming right here, and his head is swollen, and I saw the pictures, and you do see bruising, swollen head, and her grandma's like, you have to take him to the doctor, you have to. And so she made an appointment for the doctors. She has a, oh god, what do you call it, a DHS meeting, I think like the next day or two, and then she does take him to the doctor that following Wednesday and Thursday. The swelling had gone down after a few days, but the bruising around his eyes here, just symmetrical, got darker and darker, and which was still very concerning. And they even took photos at the care facility. And oh god, a couple days after that, Kara had let Brandon babysit Callan. Oh, I forgot. So sometime that weekend, before they went to their grandmother's for dinner, sometime that weekend, I forgot, this is what they called this the crawl ball incident. And if you don't know what a crawl ball is, like, it's a little ball that goes on the floor and it lights up and has a little motor in it, and it encourages babies to learn to crawl. No, it's just a toy that stays on the ground. That weekend, I'm going to assume it had to have been the Saturday, like the day after Grandma's. Kara and Brandon had gotten high. They came home. Kara put Callan in the crib, which is in the master bedroom. Brandon fell asleep in the master bedroom. Kara went out to smoke a cigarette. She then hears a loud cracking sound, and then Callan started crying. And she runs in there. The crawl ball is not on the floor anymore. It's now in his crib, and he's screaming. And Kara's like, what the fuck just happened? Brandon's like, no, like, he's awake at this point. She consoles him, and then ironically the bruising starts to form here, head's swelling. And so anyway, so that happened. So fast forward to a week, she leaves Callan in the care of Brandon for a little bit, like not that long. She leaves probably to go get drugs. I don't know, I don't remember. But anyway, Brandon and Callan are alone. He texts or calls her, I don't recall which one, but tells her that, hey, just so you know, like, while you were gone, Callan fell. He was on the bed and he like rolled off and he fell. He hit his head on the bed frame or something, and it's just a scratch. So I'm just letting you know, like, he's fine. And she's like, are you sure? And he's like, no, he's fine, like, don't worry. And she's like, okay. Well, she comes home, she checks on him, it's fine. I don't know if she sees anything, but then a couple days later, there's a giant bruise all here on the top of his ear and all along the side of his head, and it is on his left side. And she takes pictures of it. So side note, she documents everything. She's taking pictures of everything: the bruising, the swelling, the bruising on his ear, on the side of his head. And she texts him and is like, this is not a scratch, this is a bruise. But he's just like, I didn't do it. Like, he denies the whole time. And then the next, like, fast forward to a few days, this was like, I think the 8th or the 9th of February 2017. I don't remember which day, but it's one of them. Brandon is babysitting Callan for an entire day, because Kara is going to court because she put a restraining order out on her mother, for a multitude of reasons. Her mother, from what I know, the restraining order that she put out was because she felt her mom was a problem, because her mom lived at the apartment at some point with her and she was trying to kick her mom out, so she's getting a restraining order, so she had a hearing for that. And then so Brandon was alone with Callan for like 5 hours all day, most of the day. Kara comes home that evening, and this had to have been the 9th. Yeah, because that was the day of her court hearing. She comes home and she goes to change his diaper, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but let me just say there was a lot of bruising and swelling. It was awful. Awful. It was awful. And she is panicked, obviously. Lots of swelling, bruising, to, I'll just say, parts. And she takes pictures, which I saw, and she sends them to her dad, and it's like, I don't know what this is, what's going on. Is he irritated from his diaper? And so she's like, I think I have to go to the doctor. And her dad's like, I'll go with you, like, if you need to go. And so she actually calls, like, non-emergency, and she's like, here's what I see and here's what I think it is, I'm not sure. They tell her, here's things you can do, home remedies, like make an appointment, a doctor's appointment for like tomorrow. So she makes a doctor's appointment for the next day at 10 a.m. But in the meantime, she's like doing all these like home remedies to help soothe him because he's in pain. And we saw her Google search history, which was researching everything. Why is this part of my baby red, swollen, all this stuff? Anyway, Brandon spends the night with her that night, and the next morning Brandon is supposed to leave for work. He missed his ride, so she had to take him because, I don't know, he probably slept in, who knows. She's upset. She's like, I have to take him to a doctor's appointment. And he's like, well, I need to go to work. And so she cancels that doctor's appointment and makes it for 3 p.m. instead. So I believe she takes him to work, God, maybe like, I want to say sometime between 8 and 9, I think. And I only think this because they mentioned how Kara was alone with Callan for 3 hours. Because Brandon somehow got off work early at like 11:30, and when she dropped him off, she planned to go home, but she couldn't make it home because Callan was crying, and he wouldn't stop crying. He didn't sleep well that night before, obviously. He was hurting and hurt, and so he was hysterically crying, and she was trying to console him in the parking lot. She would drive and then pull over to try and console him, and then when Brandon's like, hey, I need you to pick me up at 11:30, she's like, okay, I haven't even made it home anyway. So she goes to pick him up. By then Callan had, you know, when babies like crying and don't stop, eventually they're exhausted and they pass out. So Callan had probably just passed out. He was asleep. They get home to her apartment, and she's like, don't take him out of his car seat, because he finally went to sleep. So they put him in the bedroom on the floor, like he's in the car seat. They just put the car seat on the floor in the bedroom. And here's 2 different sides to a story. So Brandon's side is that on their way home from her picking him up from work, they stopped at a Plaid Pantry, which is like a little mini mart, and they bought some snacks and like cigarettes and whatever. And they come home, and that Brandon puts Callan on the floor in the bedroom in the car seat. He goes to the bathroom. Kara's outside smoking. He hears some like moaning or whimpering or something from the car seat, like from Callan. He comes out of the bedroom, and Callan is seizing, and he calls for Kara to come in, and she's like, call 911. And he calls 911, and then she takes over the phone eventually. Kara's side of the story is that they come home from her picking Brandon up from work. Callan's in the bedroom on the floor in the car seat, and she is like, I'm gonna go to Plaid Pantry, the little mini mart, and I'm gonna go pick up some things. And he's like, okay. So Brandon is alone with Callan for not that long. She leaves. You know what? Here's what she kind of testified to, was she went to Plaid Pantry to get snacks. We don't know how long she was planning to be gone. One theory is that she was going to go get snacks and probably go get drugs to bring home, because all Brandon ever talked about was getting high and wanting to get high. So she probably went to go get some snacks. She even remembers what she bought. She bought some gummy worms, scratch tickets, a vitamin water, I think cigarettes. And she said that Brandon called her, and while she's in the middle of checking out, she's got all her stuff on the counter, and he's like, Callan's seizing, like you do when you're on drugs, like, because I guess she gets drug-induced seizures. She's like, call 911. And he's like, I don't want to call 911. She's like, you call 911. She hangs up, and she drops all of her stuff, even her wallet, and she just runs out, gets in her car. She, like, this little mini mart is only like a 4 or 5 minute drive from her apartment. She makes it back in a minute because she's speeding. She said she went like 80 miles an hour. And she gets to the apartment, and then she takes the phone from Brandon as he had just called 911. Now, 2 sides of the story. At first you're like, I don't know what to believe. Like, it would have made more sense for them to stop at the mini mart, like on their way home. But Kara's saying that they didn't, that she went after she dropped them off. And here's the thing. They have phone records. They have phone records of Brandon calling Kara twice. One was a missed call, I think, and then the second one she picked up, and that's when she told him to call 911, and he didn't want to, and she said, you have to, and they hung up. He waited an entire minute before he called 911. 1 whole minute, which doesn't sound long, but when you actually count 60 seconds, that is a long time to be watching a baby having a seizure and then not call 911. And that's on his phone records. I heard the whole 911 call from start to finish. Like when you watch a crime documentary, you only get the bits and pieces that are important. We heard the entire call. And this call was one of the hardest things I've ever had to listen to. And Brandon calls 911. You can't really hear or make out what he's saying. And it's all garbled. Like he sounds panicked, he sounds scared. But then Kara takes over the phone, and you hear, it's like you hear her run in from outside, and she gets the phone, and there's a part in this 911 call where she's begging for her baby not to die, and then she feels like he's unresponsive, and she just is hysterical because she thinks her baby's dying. And there's no faking that. There's no, like, that's real. And that was hard. Anyway, I'm kind of mentally wanting to be done now. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I get to that part and I'm like kind of mentally done, a little bit, because that's hard. So I think here's what I want to do. So, okay, I'll finish this story a little bit and then I'll still open this spooky box. But I'm gonna come to an end here shortly. So 911 call, Cal and the paramedics show, everyone show up, interviews are being held, police interview Kara, interview Brandon. Callan is taken away. All of his injuries are documented. He is ultimately taken away, like from Kara. So all in all of Callan's injuries, you remember the one where it was the ear and the side of the head. We also learned that probably at some point, maybe from that same day, from that same injury, Callan had a fractured jaw. Also, we learned that the swelling of the head and the bruising, initially that is from hair pulling. When you take a young infant and you just grab the hair and you pull really, really hard, it causes swelling and symmetrical bruising in the eyes. So it wasn't from an actual crawl, like the crawl ball was probably thrown at him, maybe at the wall, I don't know, and it landed in his crib, but his hair was pulled. And then the injuries to his lower area, after, when Kara changed the diaper and saw all the problems, that injury was a result of kicking. So he had kicked, like you were to kick a soccer ball to launch it into the goal. That is a result of kicking. The seizure was from shaking. So they had done a CAT scan, and he had a subdermal hemorrhage, which is bleeding between the skull and the brain, like the lining in there. Also, his brain had shifted, so he was shaken so hard that it shifted his brain and caused bleeding, and which then caused a seizure. Now, we've also learned that with that type of that bleeding, symptoms are immediate. So it's not like you you shake a baby and then like hours later, then they show some symptoms. It's immediate. And so that to me was like, okay, it's because at first I thought, oh, what if Kara had hurt her baby before she picked Brandon up because she was alone with him for 3 hours? What if she shook him and then he passed out, and then when they got home, then he had a seizure? The doctor's saying, no, that's not how that works. And Brandon was alone with Callan when Kara went to the mini mart, and he could have been angry and shaken the baby, and then the baby starts seizing and then he panics. And then of course that's when that whole day started. So that's what we learned about all the injuries. Long story shorter, because I want to get to the end. Kara and Brandon, like, Kara is not, she's still a bad mother. She put her baby in that position, right? She's not perfect. She has problems. She's a drug addict. She's in prison currently. However, based on all the evidence that I saw and everything, her own testimony, because she was there in the courtroom at one point, her testimony, the 911 call, she's got problems. She's not the best mom. And I'm sure she got frustrated, like all parents do with their babies when they don't stop crying, or with their kids, you know, like everyone kind of gets frustrated and tired when they're frustrated and tired. But based on everything I saw, as frustrated as she would get, and as hard as being kind of a single mom would be, I don't think she would ever hurt her baby to the point where he would almost die. I don't even think she would do it accidentally almost kill her baby. Like, I could see her being frustrated and being like irritated and like maybe like, oh, shut up, this is hard, I can't do this anymore, you know. But I don't think she would ever like kick, throw, or hurt. I just don't think she would actually, like, I don't think she would like have anger issues to that extent. And based on all the evidence all of us jurors saw in the timeline, ironically, how come bruises start to appear a couple days after Brandon had babysat Callan? And he was emotionless in the courtroom, emotionless in phone calls, in the police video interview, all just based on everything, we found him guilty on all 7 counts. And that was this last Friday, was when we gave the verdict and all that. His sentencing is not until, it's in like a month. But this was hard because it was almost like we had to live it too. Like, we had to watch it, we had to live it. And a baby, a helpless baby, like, that was just raw emotion, photographs. Like, no one should have to see what we saw as jurors, and no one should have to experience what Kara, a mother of a baby, had to experience. We later learned, after we made the decision, we later were then given more information. We hung out with the judge and the clerks, and he told us all the reasons why we were excused from the courtroom and why we missed so much stuff, like certain things we weren't allowed to hear. And it was because Brandon was currently incarcerated, and we didn't know his history. He also didn't testify. And we didn't know his history because they knew if we knew his history, it would impact our decision making. And we needed to make our decision based on this one case alone with these facts. But we learned that he has quite a history, and he is a bad person, which made us feel, it was like reassurance, like, okay, we really did make the right decision. Like, we kind of knew, but we really did make the right decision. he's an animal abuser. I saw all the court records. I went online, they're public. I read them all. He is a bad guy. And I mean, Kara's not great herself, but she's not that bad. There's a reason why they're both incarcerated. And I'm hoping with the sentencing hearing coming up, because I really want to go. We're allowed to go. I want to hear how long he gets put away for. We weren't told an exact number, but we're told it's going to be a very long time. All in all, I don't mind talking about this case, but it just takes a long time to tell the story. And I know that there's many details that I missed. And because I'm still mentally recovering from it, I feel like talking about it is also healing. And so when I do talk about it, it's like a little piece of me heals. And it's not like, oh, I'm remembering it and it starts all over again. It's like verbally processing it, because I wasn't allowed to verbally process it for like a week and a half. To be able to talk about it is healing and good, and it makes me feel better, even though it's hard sometimes and it is exhausting. But I also want people to know how horrible this guy is. I want everyone to know who he is, and I want everyone to hate him. And I don't think that about people. But based on what I saw and what I heard in that courtroom, he deserves nothing but hate. I feel bad for his family. You know, those who were a part of his life and love him. Like, I feel bad. That's who I feel bad for. I don't feel bad for him. I feel bad for everyone involved that is innocent, you know. But yeah, so I'm gonna end this opening the rest of the spooky box, but also saying, if you have any questions, maybe I'll do like a Q&A after this video or something. Like, I'll give it like a week or whatever. But if you have any questions about any of this case, how the system works, like the process of being a juror, or like any questions, whether it's related to the case or about me, what I did every day, any questions, anything, just comment down below. And I'll just do like a Q&A video or something answering those questions. And so if you ask a question down below and if someone asks a question and then like you also have that same question, just thumbs up that question, so that I know which ones are the most important, if that makes sense. My brain is all over the place, but I'm still currently in the process of trying to find normal again for myself. I've never been through anything like this before, and I've never seen anything like that before. And so I don't know how long it takes to, I don't know, find normal. I'm doing better, you know, little by little every day, but like still kind of wonky. And I'm not in the mood to watch or listen to crime, murder, anything. I don't even want to watch anything too stressful. Like, there's certain like cartoons that are like, that have really like some stress plots, and I'm not in the mood to watch stress plots. You know, like, I just kind of want things that are just kind of mild. So, you know, watching a lot of The Office, and I don't know, things that are a little more mild in relation, or comedy movies with nothing too stressful. So that's kind of the mood that I'm in lately. But comment down below any questions. I'm gonna finish opening this spooky box. Looks like this is a bookmark. I should have just like pulled out a piece at a time as I was telling the story. Coffin creeper. And now that I've been talking a lot, my throat's really dry. Ooh, crying necklace, dude. I've done a lot of crying. I've cried. So I feel this. Oh, it's like shimmery. Sorry if it's backwards. I like the little droplet. Yeah, I should have worn this to court. I love the font though. The font is really cool. You see that? Yeah. That's cute. That. And oh, this is really cute. It's a little skeleton pin. It looks cute. Let's see. Monster Girls. Oh, it's a wall calendar. That's cool. So like, yeah, see, I should have opened this last month. Oh, neat. There's different ladies. Cool. Ooh, that's fun. Huh. These are neat. Ooh, I like that one. That one's cool. That's June. These are fun. What's for December? Oh, this is for December. That's really cool. All right, awesome. And what else? What is this? They're letters. My old haunt. So it's like a garland. It says my old haunt, a gothic room garland. Only open when ready to carefully assemble to prevent tearing. So it's just paper. That's really cool. I love the font. I love this font. It's so fun. Okay, let's make sure I have everything. The black velvet drawstring bag, enamel pin, crying necklace, the wall calendar, bookmark, garland, and candy. Yep. It's nice to get some spooky goodies that aren't too spooky. I'm sure I'll get back into my normal, like every once in a while, crime documentary or murder podcast, but for the time being, I'm healing. But again, if you want to read my posts on Instagram, you totally can. My Instagram is LadySameBrain. It's like a day, I think I posted it yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, but it's just a summary version of what I kind of said here, but not too much detail. So I'll leave all the detail for all the questions that you guys ask me, and then I'll just do a Q&A. So I'm gonna go paint something and be creative, but sorry this was so long. But I'm sure you don't care. I don't know, maybe you do. Okay, bye.